Today I'm going to be talking about one of the strangest and most disturbing short stories I have ever read, and that is The Human Chair by Edogawa Ranpo. At this point, not a lot of things get to me. However, this story has managed to kind of make its way under my skin, and it has not left me since my original read-through. And because I have to suffer, I thought it would only be fair if I extended that misery onto you. So without wasting any more time, let's get into one of the most disturbing and strangest stories I have ever read, The Human Chair by Edogawa Ranpo. Our story starts with a woman named Yoshiko watching her husband leave for his job at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Not only was Yoshiko married to a successful man, she herself was very accomplished. See, Yoshiko was a famous author, and because of this, she would receive many fan letters each day. One day, while reading these fan letters, she notices that one is significantly larger than the others. The letter was from a cabinet maker who described himself as hideously ugly, especially in the condition he was in now. However, despite his hideous and ragged appearance, he assured Yoshiko that his heart contained nothing but the purest of passions. The cabinet maker talked of his skills, especially in making high-end luxury chairs. Although the man did lead a very humble life, after finishing each chair, he would sit upon it and imagine all the places it could end up. I let fly the imagination and used to think about people that would curl up in the chair. No doubt aristocrats who lived in palaces with exquisite paintings of priceless value on the walls. Lavish crystal chandeliers hung from their roofs. After a while, the man began to believe that he belonged there too. He would imagine himself curled up there with the woman of his dreams that was sophisticated and far different from the whining women of his neighborhood. These feelings built up inside the cabinet maker until one fateful day in which he received a commission from a nearby hotel for his most luxurious order yet. It was here in which he made his masterpiece. The leather of the chair was like heaven to touch, and it wasn't too hard and it wasn't too soft, and the back was tilted at the perfect angle. He once again sat in this chair and imagined the places it would go. However, this time he did not want to part from his masterpiece, and he was struck by a sinister temptation. The man began to reassemble the chair, but this time with a cavity just large enough for a human to fit inside, as well as a small area to store supplies. He also added a small peephole that was completely invisible from the outside, but just large enough that the person hiding within the chair could see everything. The man then hid inside his creation, but not before organizing for the hotel to come and pick it up. Although he could hear the workmen complaining about how heavy the chair was, due to its grandeur, no one suspected that its creator was hiding inside. The chair gets placed in the hotel lobby, and the man comes up with a plan to sneak out at night and rob the hotel of all its valuables. However, it is here in the hotel lobby in which the man discovers a new pleasure. He fell on my knees, a large and heavy body, like that of a European, and I had the feeling that he bounced 2 or 3 times until he ended up settling in completely. Only a thin line separated him from my knees, and I could feel the warmth of his body. By the way, now might be a good time to mention that when I do use quotes from the original text, I will change it slightly. The reason I'm doing this is because the story was originally written in Japanese, and the Kindle version in which I am using for this video has a lot of grammatical errors. For example, a lot of characters will switch pronouns throughout the text, such as when Yoshiko sat down to read the letters, it says, in the first place, he dedicated himself to the shorter letters. I am almost certain that this is just like a mistranslation and that the author's not trying to make some weird convoluted point about Yoshiko's gender fluidity. So a lot of times when I do read the quotes, I will often paraphrase them just so they make sense. Anyway, back to the story. The man began enjoying people sitting in his chair because he could tell so much about a person just from the way their body felt. The leather was thin and it allowed the man to understand people's bodies in a way that sight just could not provide. He could feel the curvatures of their spine and the thickness of their thighs and the width of their shoulder blades. and he especially enjoyed it when women sat in his chair. He tells of this one European girl who was singing when she entered the room before suddenly sitting down in the chair. The girl continued to sing, and the man could feel the way she moved to the rhythm of the song. He imagined himself kissing this woman down her snowy white neck, and how he would do anything to remove the thin layer separating them. The pleasure was maddening. It was here that the man began to realize, although he originally stowed away in the chair to rob the hotel's wealthy patrons, maybe that didn't matter anymore. Maybe his destiny was this chair. Due to his ugliness, he couldn't be with a woman, but in this strange, dark world, he could. He could find love. At this point, the man was too far gone. He was leaving the chair less and less, and due to the long periods of time without stretching, his muscles turned as tight as bone. So on the rare occasion in which he did leave the chair to go and find food, he would have to crawl on his hands and knees because he couldn't straighten his legs. The man enjoyed what he called his love affairs with the many foreign women that visited the hotel. He described some as muscular and firm, while he described others as fat and some as slimy, whatever that means. I've got to say, this guy sure has a lot of opinions about women for a guy that lives in a chair. The author writes a very, very convincing kind of like a nice guy incel character, and I like this a lot because it really goes to show that these types of guys have existed since the dawn of time. The story was written in the 1920s, and it feels like it's describing your average Redditor. Like, the guy describes himself as like hideously ugly, he doesn't clean himself, and he doesn't leave his own little dark world. And despite acknowledging all of these facts, he's simultaneously like, I need a sophisticated lady. I don't want any of these whining women from my neighborhood. Like, I feel like there's a saying here about like glass houses and stones. Like, maybe we calm down just a little bit. Like, I just know if this guy had Twitter, he'd be like commenting on photos of like Sydney Sweeney saying that she's like a 4 and that her tits are too far apart or some shit. Like, I feel like this guy was born in the wrong generation. You know, he would have loved 4chan. That's all I'm saying. Unfortunately for the man living in the chair, the hotel underwent new management, and this new management viewed all the luxury items that the hotel owned as a waste of money, and in order to recoup some of their losses, they were going to put them all up for auction. It was at this point in which the man started to reflect on all of his love affairs. Despite him enjoying them thoroughly, they were all with foreign women, and he really just longed for a nice, sophisticated Japanese lady to settle down with, because unsurprisingly, the chair incel is also a little racist. Fortunately for him though, the chair was purchased by a Japanese dignitary living in Tokyo. Luckier still, the man did not purchase it for himself, but instead for his young, attractive wife. Things could not have worked out better. The man was getting everything he wanted. You have no idea how much I loved that lady. She was the first Japanese woman with whom I established such a close contact. And if that were not enough, she had a body wonderfully attractive. I saw her as the answer to all of my prayers. The woman was an intellectual, and due to the nature of her work, she would spend hours a day sitting in that chair. With each time she sat on that man's lap, his affection for her only grew. He started to reflect on all of the women from the hotel and realized that they were just meaningless flings. But this woman he properly loved. She was his soulmate. When she would collapse on his knees exhausted, he would hug her closer than he had ever hugged someone before. He could tell by the way that she would surrender herself to his comfort, that she had a deep, intense love for this armchair. As time passed, the man began to feel an urge that he had not felt before, an urge to have his feelings reciprocated, an urge to be seen. The man knew that if he suddenly exposed himself to the woman, that she would freak out and alert either her husband or a member of her staff. Instead, he would write her a letter explaining his predicament and confessing everything that he would want her to know. The man then reveals that, as she had probably already guessed by now, that the woman of his affections was Yoshiko herself. Although he knows he is a disgusting creature who is unworthy to touch the soles of her feet, his love is still pure and beautiful. The man then requests to see the woman, and if she obliged, he would be eternally grateful. He reveals that he is no longer hidden within the chair, but is stowed away somewhere within the house. If Yoshiko wishes to see the man, she is to place her handkerchief in the flower pot on the windowsill in her bedroom. It is then that the man will enter as a humble visitor. The letter ends and Yoshiko is pale and frozen with fear. She thought back to the countless hours she had spent in that chair, totally unaware that there was a man living within it. She then gets up and paces around her room, terrified. Although the man had admitted that he is no longer within it, she still could not gather enough strength to inspect the chair closely. She didn't want to see the cavity in which he resided, or the area in which he stored his supplies. It was then in which she was interrupted by one of her maids carrying a letter. She recognized the handwriting immediately. However, this letter was significantly smaller than the last. It was an apology. The letter claims that the previous message was nothing more than a fictional manuscript. The man identified himself as nothing more than an ardent admirer of Yoshiko's work and had just been inspired after finding out that she had recently purchased a luxurious chair. The letter ends asking for her opinion on his fictional manuscript. That brings us to the end of the human chair, and needless to say, I have a lot of thoughts. Although the ending is left up to interpretation, I think it is pretty obvious that the original letter is the one that is truthful. The way I read the ending is that the man is hiding somewhere in which he can see Yoshiko, and because it is only after she becomes visibly agitated that the second letter gets delivered. I believe that the man had prepared this letter just in case things didn't go to plan, and that's how he was able to deliver it so quickly. I also interpret the original letter as truthful because how on earth would the man know that she recently came into possession of a luxury chair? Like, that's not just like common knowledge. And even if he did have some access to the logs from the auction, it would show Yoshiko's husband's name, not Yoshiko's. So how on earth would he know that she was the one that would predominantly use it? Additionally, say for whatever reason that it actually wasn't the husband that bought the chair, but it was Yoshiko, then why include that detail in the original letter if both of you know it's false? Anyway, I personally love this story to the point in which I would say it's probably one of my favorite short stories. Like, I think it's just a really unique concept that is played out very well. Like, the story is super short, which I think is one of its greatest strengths. Although despite saying this, my main criticism is I really wish we did just spend a little bit more time with the man observing Yoshiko from the chair. I feel as though once he entered Yoshiko's house, it was just kind of a race to the end, and I really wish that bit was kind of just drawn out just a little. I think if we're keeping with this whole nice guy incel vibe, I would really kind of like to hear about what the guy thought about Yoshiko's husband, for example. Despite the man claiming that he and Yoshiko are soulmates, he never really addresses the fact that she is already married. I think it could have been a cool opportunity for him to kind of like go through her stuff to like show that he truly knows her while her husband doesn't, or something along those notes. However, that's just my opinion about it. I think you can tell if a story's good if my main criticism is that I wanted more of it. Another thing I wanted to talk about is why I decided to make this video at all, because it is very different from the previous videos I have put out on this channel. And first things first, it's Halloween. I thought I would stick with the spirit of the season, but also it's because it reminded me of one of my biggest fears growing up. When I was young, I saw a video on YouTube called Creeper in My Apartment. In this video, it shows a woman living in the crawl space of a man's apartment in which she would sneak out in the night, piss in his sink, and eat his food. Rewatching this as an adult, it is very obviously a hoax. And a funny little detail is that despite filming this 15 years after that video's release, they only just released a video showing unreleased footage of the woman. Despite this video almost definitely being fake, the fear it installed in a younger version of myself was definitely very real. The thought that someone could be living inside your house without you knowing absolutely terrified me. Like, your home is meant to be the place in the world in which you are at your safest. So the thought of a stranger with unknown intentions violating that space, the thought's just harrowing. I actually have a memory that I had forgotten until I was writing the script for this video. When I was young, I would sneak under my house and leave a box of dried apricots. The reason I would do this is because I would actually record how many apricots were in the container, and so when I checked on it in a few weeks, I would be able to tell if someone had eaten any. It was my own kind of sneaky way of making sure no one was living under my house without me knowing. I'm honestly so grateful that no one ate any of those apricots, because I have no idea what 10-year-old me would have done if they did. But anyway, thank you Edogawa Ranpo for reinstalling that fear in me. I appreciate it. Thanks, mate. I honestly think the human chair bothers me so much because it reminds me of that fear I had growing up. Like, the idea of a man being so close to you that he can smell you and feel the curvature of your spine. It just gets to me. Like, I don't know what to say. It just bothers me a lot. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it here. I really hope you enjoyed. This is a new style of video for me, so if you did like it, please leave a comment saying so. Or if you're feeling extra adventurous, maybe even consider subscribing. I'm a new channel, so it really does kind of go a long way. But that's all for me at the moment, and I'll see you next time.